Well, greetings to all you folks out there in YouTube land. Thank you for those of you that have tuned in to this video. This is video number 2 in a series of videos I'm going to be doing on this new YouTube channel called Think for Change. And the title of the whole series of videos is Reason and Beyond. And the reason I've chosen that title, among other reasons, is that is the title of my latest book. So here's a little commercial plug. And the latest book that I have done that is now in production with the publisher, and it will be coming out next spring of 2019. We are doing this first group of videos in late May and June of 2018. So the book itself covers a number of themes, a number of aspects of the present time, the present era, present human life, that I think are important to both talk about and to raise questions about. And the videos are based on the same idea. We will be talking about the same ideas, and we will have the same purpose. But let me say, just right off the bat, I think I said it in the first video, but if I didn't, I'm going to say it now. It is not my intent or my purpose, nor do I have the right to persuade or convince anybody. What I am providing here is a message, just a message, and many people are bringing this message, hopefully to the minds of more and more of us at this real critical time in our history. And so I see my job as just as a messenger, bringing this message, and each of us brings the message in our own sort of unique way. But the core of the message, I think that many of us are bringing from different angles, different spiritual traditions, different religions, or no religion, just from a sense of goodwill in our hearts. The core of all these messages is love. Love your fellow human beings, love yourself, love all of life, love the planet. And included in that is a sense of goodwill, a willingness to join and help each other. Of course, tolerance and forgiveness, which is a real important issue at this time. Are we good? Okay, so again, the core of the message is love. That's what I'm going to be aiming for. I'm coming from a spiritual perspective, from the perspective of that dimension, that beingness in which we all live, move, breathe, and have our being. And of course, the core of what we are, this has been talked about in a lot of different traditions, is love. Is love. All right. Now each video will have its own theme or title, and what I was given today to talk about was life. Life itself. So we are going to be addressing the basics in most of these videos, but it's often the basics, those aspects of life that are just so fundamental to our existence that we don't necessarily notice. And why is that? It's because life itself and the activity of our minds and all the activity around us, the demands made on us, tend to pull our attention outward always. And I mean, there's something to be said for that. We do have to focus on outward things. We do have to act. We do have to make decisions. That is part of life. But I want to speak about what life is fundamentally, where it begins, where it takes place. So let me start first. Life fundamentally, and again this sounds kind of obvious, but hopefully I can make it interesting in a moment. Life fundamentally is being, isn't it? It is existence. You have a sense of being, a sense of existence. It's often been described, or from some traditions, as a sense of I am. Okay, I am. And of course, without that being, without existence, there is no life for you. Now there's another part of that aspect, let's say, of yourself, of being, that we call consciousness. Okay, with being comes this fundamental quality, or this fundamental aspect of existence, of being, that we call consciousness or mind. Okay? And through that mind, through that consciousness, we are aware of our being. And I often describe that as a sense of, I am aware. So I am not only aware, but of course in the human consciousness, right? In that developed consciousness that human beings have, I am aware, and I am aware that I am aware. We call that self-awareness. So our life most fundamentally is a sense of being. Now, if you take that deep enough, and this is what the spiritual traditions teach, it's a sense of being that's literally universal. It's not just it's not a sense of being this or that. It's I simply exist. And in your quiet moments, if for example, at a time when you're not busy having to do things or having to focus on things outwardly, you could just sit quietly and turn your attention inward. This is often what's called meditation. And let the mind be quiet. You will experience just a sense of being and of being present. And that sense of being underlies both the sense of an identity and all of your activities. And your activities, I find this a really interesting point. And this is a point I like to make with people. Life itself, remember, we exist, we are being, and I'm talking about life here from the perspective of individual being, of being a human being, being in the world, but of what it is to actually live, okay, to actually be as a human being. So we have our being, our existence, and then we have our awareness that we exist, and our awareness, as I said, that we are aware that we are aware that we exist. Of course, we are aware of other things around us. And from a very fundamental perspective, you can say that your life, everything, both the inner kind of aspect, what you feel within and what you're aware of within, your thoughts, your feelings, and the outer aspect of our life, our activities and our outer perceptions, everything takes place in consciousness, in your mind. Now, consciousness is the most fundamental aspect of mind. It is the basis, the foundation of mind. It is that aspect of mind as well that is self-aware. In fact, consciousness, again, if you become quiet enough, and this is what the various spiritual traditions often include, what we call meditation, what we call stilling the mind, quieting the mind, or there's also a tradition called contemplative prayer, which is very similar. The mind becomes still. Now, when your mind becomes very still, and the activity of mind ceases, and you cease to pay attention to what happens outwardly, and hopefully it's in a quiet environment, you then really discover yourself in a very fundamental sense that you are consciousness, the sense of being conscious, of being aware, as well as the sense of being. You could say they're sort of one thing, although if you really turn inwardly, you can kind of see that it's, although they're one thing, they're also, each is an aspect of what you are. So consciousness is literally the background, and I would say even the medium in which your life takes place. In fact, I will go so far as to say, again, in the current view of what a human being is, in the consensual view of reality, the view and the experience that we have in what's called the human state, which is a state in which consciousness seems to be focused here, or just right here in the head, in what's often called the brain, or in the body. In that state, one is not experiencing the whole of one's consciousness. One is just experiencing Consciousness is just sort of a medium that is filled up with its activity, which is thoughts, feelings, images, memories, emotions, etc., and the outer perceptions. Of course, our inner activities are also, we are aware of them through a sort of inner perception, sort of inner hearing, or a sort of inner sensing or viewing. So in the more conventional state of consciousness, which I call the human consciousness, or the personal consciousness, the person, the ego, both our sense of being and the pure sense of being conscious, consciousness or awareness itself, is pretty well completely, let's say, obscured, filled up with the content, the activity of consciousness. And yet, all that activity is not really taking place for you anywhere except in your consciousness. You see, if you are not aware of things around you, you are not aware of your outer perceptions, you are not aware, for example, of the inner feelings, right? The thoughts and feelings and things that are moving within you, then they are not happening for you, are they? For example, when you're in deep sleep or in a coma, at that time, it's literally like you don't have a life. Life is not happening, right? You are, as we say, unconscious. So life itself, almost any way you want to look at it, does take place in this context, this background of your awareness, of your consciousness. And in fact, you could say that it is from that it arises. Now I'll take another step here. Even your body is actually, again, the conventional view is that your mind is within your body. But actually, it's the other way around. Your body is in your mind, is in your consciousness. Okay. And here I'll make the point that mind itself, consciousness itself, is its own dimension. You could say it's a part of that spiritual dimension. Okay. Mind is not simply the brain or the nervous system, all the perceptual apparatus of the body. The brain and the nervous system, all the perceptual apparatus of the body, that's actually the instrument or the instruments of consciousness through which you are aware. But as consciousness, as being, let's call it spiritual being, you actually exist prior to all that external activity. And in a fundamental sense, what I call the enlightenment traditions, the wisdom traditions, whose purpose is to bring you back to experience the spiritual reality that you are, those traditions have particular practices and they have a teaching that try to bring your attention back from all the external noise, perception, all the things that happen, as well as the internal noise, which actually is a bit more of an issue when it comes to quieting it. So that's what meditation is. And as I said, in deep contemplative prayer, there are some other sort of techniques or practices or ways of focusing that various traditions use as well. And the purpose of all of those, okay, no matter the tradition, is to sort of turn your attention inward, away from the outward activities of your life. Turn it inward, and then let as well, and some traditions have different ways of doing what we call meditation or stilling the mind. There's different ways to do it. I'm not going to go into details. But then doing what you can and relaxing and letting the mind, the attention function of the mind, right? It's the attention that's looking everywhere. It's your attention right now. The attention function of your mind right now is what's directing. It's what is aware of me sitting here blabbing away and aware of what I'm saying. Okay. So in the spiritual traditions, what they try to do, what we try to do, I'm part of a spiritual tradition myself called A Course in Miracles. It's the main teaching that I've been working with, although I honor and I love all the traditions and all the religions. But what the spiritual traditions try to do bring your attention back within, and then let the mind become quiet. Let that surface activity of thought and feeling, which is ceaseless, it's constant, let that come to a halt or slow down. And then your attention, which includes the sense of being you, right, of the I, the sense of being aware, and the attention can sink down again into its source, which is consciousness itself. So now the attention of mind, instead of being directed at all sorts of perceptual data, perceptual observation, all the various activities, attention now turns back on itself, on its source, and rests within itself. And when you go into what we call deep meditation, then you begin to feel yourself as consciousness, as being. And that is an expanded sense of what you are. That is one reason meditation is popular. That is one reason it calms the mind, because what you're doing is turning your attention back to the truth of what you are. And in the truth of what you are, there is no tension, right? There is no fear. There is not that incessant activity. There is peace and stillness. And that's what meditation is about. That's what it aims at. Okay, I think I've been talking for close to 15 minutes, and I try to keep these videos to about 15 minutes. You know, there's a lot said, and I don't want to wear anybody out or bore anybody or lose your attention. So anyway, I thank you for those of you who have joined me today. God bless you, and God bless us everyone, and I hope we'll see you for the next video.